And when I asked the students to talk about the things that they were grateful for, what I wanted to share was the one thing that I'm very grateful for, and that's the students who come back to visit me, because whether they show up as Connor did with a tailored three-piece suit and his kid sister in tow, or as Sam Olson did when he showed up and said, I want to teach your classes for the day and tell these kids what it's really like. Or I just got a text from another student who's applying for jobs, and he says, this adulting stuff, it's hard, it sucks, you have to tell your college class that. I said, but I told you that, right? Why didn't you listen the first time? And so one thing that I think is unique is that about visiting with those students, because they're about ready to, graduate college and enter the workforce. And that's really the skills I've been trying to give you all these years, is to impact you then. Because yes, this is a great accomplishment, but I mean, you kind of have to try not to pass high school, right? So that's wonderful, but when it counts, the high stakes are really 4, 5, 6 years down the road. And one student who came back to visit me was Sarah Corpy, and she told a story my juniors that has stuck with me all these years. And of course, it kind of glazed over them because, every one of you here is in a very unique time in your life. You're about to have a big celebration just for you. People are going to show up and give you money and want nothing in return. Maybe a thank you note, a piece of cake, and maybe some pulled pork or something. That is never, ever going to happen again. I've been to, when kids have graduated from college, I went there, I didn't give them any money. It was, we expect you to graduate from college. And when I got married, there was a party for me, but it really wasn't about me, it was about my wife, right? And brides, it's really not about you, it's about your mother wanting some grandbabies. And then when you have a baby, as Mr. Boom found out when he attended the baby shower, it's really not about you, it's about the baby and this 5-pound screaming bundle of joy that you just want to placate and get it to be quiet. And so this really is the last time it's going to be all about you. So soak it up and enjoy it. And this point was driven home, and Sarah Corpy was talking about a time she experienced what the millennials call adulting, and the end of adulting. And she said she was a sophomore at NDSU, and she was working for an EMT service in rural North Dakota, a very small town. And it was her first night of work, and it was just her and an ambulance driver. And he made it clear, all I do is drive the ambulance, you do everything else. Not my job. I drive, you do everything else. And sure enough, on that first night, they get a call that there's a truck on a back road overturned. And they go out there and they pull up, and there's the truck. And it's such a vast county, the ambulance service often gets there before a fire department or the police. And so Sarah gets out, and she said, as soon as I headed toward the ditch and the upturned truck, I looked back at the ambulance driver, and not my job, I drive, that's it. And so she's thinking, how am I prepared for this? I'm a 19-year-old kid with some EMT training, but how I have to follow protocol. And she goes down, and she says instantly she's overwhelmed with this strong smell of iron. And as she looks down into the truck, she realizes the driver is dead. And the smell of iron is the blood from his jugular was severed, spraying blood everywhere. And she said, I had to follow protocol. She again looked up at the guy in the truck. He's like, I'm not getting out. And so she said that was the end of this little bubble my parents had wrapped me in to protect me all these years. And I couldn't get a case of senioritis. I know, so I won't call you out. There's one of my students who gave her TED Talk on senioritis. And she said, binge watching Netflix, watching kiddie videos on YouTube, learning card tricks, doing all these things. She couldn't do that because you have to go through protocol. And so she put on the rubber gloves. The young man was clearly not alive, but she still had to confirm. And she crawls down there, no pulse, comes back up, she's stripping the gloves off, and there's a truck coming down the road. And the man gets out and he says, that's my son's vehicle. And she says, now I have to deliver him the news that his son has died. Where are you ever taught to prepare for that? I'm about to utter words that man is never going to forget the rest of his life. And she said, it was at that moment that my bubble popped. And I realized how pampered and privileged and enabled and entitled I'd been all my life. And Sarah was a student who I would never attach those adjectives to. She's a hard worker, she was driven. And here she was referring to herself, so privileged. And we as a generation of parents, well, of course we want you guys to succeed, but maybe too we've also kind of limited you in the amount of grit and the difficulty you have to go through. And that's about to end in college, which is why I love visiting you guys when you come back, because you say, as Anthony Olson once said, it's all true. I said, I'm not going to lie to you. You've got to work, and you've got to study, and you've got to go to class, and all of those things. As Hannah said, it sucks. Yeah, it's not just the bed, it's a lot of grit and grind through that, but that's what's wonderful about it. And as Sarah told that message to my juniors, I just thought, you guys, it resonated with me, but I knew they're in this wonderful bubble that we all give them. And so enjoy that. You've got, 19 days left? Juniors, 120 days till next year, that's right. And probably less for you guys, for you seniors as you head out. And that bubble's gonna pop quickly. And as Sarah, bless you, and as Sarah was talking, I couldn't help but remember 5 years ago, I had my own near-death experience. I fell asleep, hit an approach, flew 50 yards into a ravine. Luckily, somebody was behind me and dialed 911 before my car had stopped spinning. A former student of mine came back and got me mobilized. I woke up in intensive care in Fargo, and I was like Dr. Frankenstein. I had collapsed lung, broken ribs, crushed cheek. My scalp had 17 staples in it, and I had catheter in, IVs. I was really, if I walked around, I was like the Frankenstein monster. And my daughter came to visit me, and she was 5 then, and the look of terror in her eyes, but also relief that I was alive. I'll never forget that. And I also thought, as Sarah told that story, just how close I'd come to having somebody give my wife and my daughter and son that same message. And so up until then, I'd taken so much for granted. The students, my family, this job, this place, the people with whom I work, for granted. And I remember my son, who was 3 at the time, he always wakes up in the middle of the night. And no matter how many times I whisper in his ear, say mom, say mom, say mom, he always cries for dad in the middle of the night. And every time he cried, it was always an inconvenience to get up, walk across the hallway, and get him his orange juice or whatever he needed. But the first night home, he started saying dad. And right away I woke up and my wife said, I'll take care of it. I said, no, this is a gift, I'll do it. And I hobbled slowly because I was a mess over there. And I was never so thankful to just be able to give him a cup of orange juice, and I never took that for granted. And when I came back, I never took my students for granted. They in fact wrote me a how-to paper. It was how not to almost die in a car accident. Sam was behind that one. But it was a joy to read their writing and to work with them after that. And so as you think about this bubble that you're in, you have a wonderful time now to thank the people here tonight who've done more for you before you were out of diapers than you can ever hope to repay, even when they're in diapers. Now that'll be many years, Mr. and Mrs. Olson, Isaac. That'll be many years down the road. But even then, you can't repay them for what they've done for you. So take some time and thank them and your teachers and all the other people who've had impacts, no matter how insignificant, in your life. And I'm looking at you, Hewitt. Okay, so, and as I was thinking about that, being grateful, I remember in 2004, my mother was battling late-stage lung cancer. And I was in graduate school at UND. It was a summer course, and I had a chance to do some writing. And I thought I would write my mother a thank you letter. And I just thanked her for everything she's done. She was my biggest fan, and I was the baby of the family, so she always doted on me, and my brother and sister were jealous if I was better than them. And so I was spoiled rotten. And my mother dying was that little bubble being popped for me. And I wrote her this letter, and I had some breaks in between class, so I ran over to the hospital. And I walked in the room, and my father was there visiting with her, and I gave it to Mom, and I visited briefly, and then I had to go back to class. And on the way out, I'll never forget, my mother, and we're not usually one of these families, but it was a gift from above, and my mother said, I love you, Kurt. I said, love you, Mom. And then my dad said, well, hey, what about me? I said, I love you too, Dad. And I didn't know it at the time, but those are the last words I would say to my mother. 2 days later, she would slip into a coma, and a day after that, she would be taken off life support and die. And I can't tell you how much of a gift that was for me to be able to know that I thanked her and told her how grateful I was. So it's not about the people you thank, it's a gift to yourself to thank these people and to let them know the impact they had on you. And I would start that by thanking the people at your table tonight. Thank you, you guys are awesome, and I will miss you. Thank you.